Now we're still starting with a fraction. I know we've been looking at fractions to decimals. Now we're gonna look fractions to percent. Write each as a percent. Use repeating decimals when necessary. Okay, so we gotta write this as a percent. What I'm going to do first of all, let me change it to decimal. We know how to go from a fraction to a decimal. We know two ways, right? We use division or we use the denominator. I'm gonna review both cases again, but let me change this to decimal first. Okay, so questions 9 and 10, let me use division. So what I'm going to do on this one, let me go 1 divided by 2. Let me put my decimal point. 2 cannot go into 1 because 2 is bigger. After the decimal point, I have as many zeros as I need. So now 2 goes into 10 5 times because 5 times 2 is 10. When I subtract this, I get 0 as a remainder, so I stopped. So first thing I have to do is move the fraction to a decimal. So convert fraction to decimal. But now for percent, I'm going to multiply this by 100. I want to multiply this by 100. One thing that we can easily do when we multiply by 100 is basically we move the decimal place 2 places to the right. We move it 2 places to the right because it has 2 zeros, right? 100 has 2 zeros. So as a matter of fact, let me include an extra decimal place here because I need to move my decimal place 2 places to the right. So 1, 2. My result happens to be 50. Okay. Because my decimal point moved all the way to the far right, I'm not going to write my 50 point. I'm not going to write my decimal point. I'm just going to write 50%. Don't forget the symbol percent. Because I said write each as a percent. I didn't say write it as a different number. I said write it as a percent. So let's take a look at number 10. I'm going to go 1 divided by 5. Let me move my decimal point. 5 cannot go into 1. So let me bring an extra 0. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. When I subtract this, I get nothing. So I have to go 0.2 times 100. That's what's going to give me my answer, 0.2 times 100. To make this easy, let me just put a 0 here at the end. Technically move the decimal 2 places to the right. So it's going to give me 20%. Like I said, I had the decimal point. You guys see where I had it. Move it 2 places to the right. If it goes all the way to the right, all the way far right, then you don't have to write it on your answer. Okay, so the one way was using the division, right? We divided. Now, another way we learned was using this as the denominator. I want the bottom to be 10, 100, 1000. So forward, I cannot really make it into 10, but I can make it into 100, right? I can make this into 100 if I multiply top and bottom by 25. Because I know 4 times 25 is 100. Now on the top, 3 times 25 is 75. So let me write this as a decimal first. I need to write my 75. I need to have 2 decimal places. And for right now, I have this here. So the decimal 0.25. Now let me multiply this by 100. Because like I said, first I convert it into a decimal. Then from decimal to percent, I multiply this by 100. Basically move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So this is going to give me 75%. Now looking at question number 12, I'm also going to use a denominator. Let me multiply top and bottom by 25, because the bottom is going to become 100. Said I want the bottom to be 10, 100, 1000, whatever I need. Now on the top, 1 times 25, well, that's 25. So my answer will have a 25 because my denominator has 2 zeros. So my answer will have 2 decimal places. So that means 2 numbers after the decimal point. So my decimal is 0.25. To convert it into a percent, multiply this by 100. Basically move the decimal 2 places to the right. And this thing is going to give me 25%. So I showed you guys on questions 9 and 10. I showed you guys how to do it using division. 11 and 12, I showed you guys how to do it using the denominator. Honestly, it doesn't matter which method you use. So matter of fact, let me flip the page. Let's take a look at number 13 and 14. Let me flip my page here. And I'm going to say, I'm going to use whichever I feel is necessary. I can use either one. I could divide 7 divided by 10. But in this case, let me just use the denominator. This one, because the bottom is already at 10, I think I can easily write my decimal here. My decimal will have a 7. I need to have 1 decimal place. Notice how I'm using the denominator. So my decimal is 0.7. I need to multiply this by 100. So let me rewrite this as 0.70. The reason why I added the extra 0 because I need to move my decimal 2 places to the right. So 0.70 times 100 gives me 70. So I'm going to call this 70%. Now looking at question number 14. Probably using the denominator, making 8 into 10 or making 8 into 100 or 1,000 might not be that easy, right? It is doable. It is doable, but maybe not be that easy. So what I'm going to do, let me use division instead. What I want you to realize is that sometimes using the denominator is easier. Like we saw number 13, I did not divide. I straight out used the denominator, but sometimes division might be easier. So let me just divide on this one. 3 divided by 8. Let me bring my decimal point. After my decimal point, I have as many zeros as I need. So then I know that 8 cannot go into 3 because 8 is bigger. But then I ask myself, how many times does 8 go into 30? I know 8 times 3 is 24, so that's less than 30. 8 times 4 is 32, so that's more than 30. So I'm going to say in this case 3 then, right? Because 8 times 4 is more than 30, so it's not 4. So I'm going to say 8 times 3. I'm trying to get as close as possible to 30 without going over. I know 8 times 3 is 24. I'm going to subtract this. 30 minus 24 is 6. My remainder is less than 8, so I'm good. I can bring an extra 0. 8 times 60. All right, so I'm trying to think 8 times something, get as close as possible to 60 without going over. I know 8 times 8 is 64, so that's too high. 8 times 7 is 56. Okay, so I'm going to say 7 then. 8 times 7 is 56. I got close to 60 without going over. When I subtract this, 60 minus 56 is 4. Let me bring an extra 0. 8 times 5 is 40. Okay, so 8 goes into 45 times because 8 times 5 is 40. When I subtract this, I get nothing. So my decimal is 0.375. I need to multiply this by 100. Once I get the decimal and multiply by 100, basically move the decimal 2 places to the right. So my answer here will be 37.5%. Okay, I move my decimal only 2 places to the right. I don't move it always all the way to the right. I move it 2 places to the right. So it is okay to have decimals in your answers.